Welcome back, everybody, to another Sunday live stream. It's a little bit cooler in the fish room today. It is a balmy 74.8 degrees. The aquariums are at 72.8 degrees, and outside is 62.2 degrees with 0.06 inches of rain, which is quite welcome. It has been months since we've really had rain, and I have been waiting for it because I want to test, will the rain from my roof with the plumbing all the way to my pond work? We got a little bit of a dose of that like a month ago, and I'm really itching to know, does the roof water make a difference on pond level in my ponds? So I think it was, might have been Lisa the Wolf. Someone asked, when do we bring pond stuff in? Yes, it was Lisa the Wolf. And she says, any tips for breaking down the tubs? How, when, outdoor temps range between 50s and 90s here currently. Yeah, so we're in that transition period. So the first thing I would say is outdoor temp doesn't matter so much as the water temp does. And so depending on how you have yours set up, maybe you've got tops on it and it's holding heat amazingly well. Maybe it's in the ground, maybe it's above the ground. So track temperatures there because you'll get a much better average. And so much so that if you're into doing some ponds and stuff outside, I highly recommend some kind of temperature sensor. I use the Yolink ones. And so like I have a reading of my big pond. It's, oh, come on, thousands of gallons of water. And then I've got like the little ponds outside. They're oddly enough 64.9. I think that was trending the same. So you can see they were hitting at about 68 at the high end and 64 at the low end. And I'm keeping species that can overwinter in our climate anyway, with a little bit of ice on the top, that kind of stuff. And so I've got things like fancy goldfish out there. I've got mosquito larvae, Daphnia, which Daphnia don't overwinter, neither do mosquito larvae. And then I'm growing out some rice fish, and then another tote has a group of rice fish. And so I don't have nearly as much to worry. But if you had species that you're fearful that they're going to get too cold, the big thing I would say is that if your pond is set up with some forethought here, it's probably not an on-off switch, meaning that like, hey, we just got a cold snap, I got to get them out of there today. It's mostly like, okay, we're having more cloudy, cool days than warm days. Maybe my next day off, I need to bring some of those in. And what I always did was I would start with bringing in what I thought was the most sensitive. And what you think's the most sensitive doesn't mean that is what is the most sensitive. When I was new to the hobby, everything was sensitive. I was so worried I was going to lose it. And then as I've been doing it for 20 years, it's like, well, I kind of want to see what happens. And it didn't take me 20 years to get there. Now, or even back then, I would bring in like 90% of anything and leave 10% to learn with. And that's how I learned, hey, cherry shrimp will overwinter for me. That's amazing. And white clouds will overwinter, and these will overwinter. And that's also how I learned that like a specific strain of platies would go down into the 50s, but then they started getting like bacterial infections and things. And so that was the point at which, okay, you got to come inside now and we're going to treat you back up. And the goal would be, for me at least, was to try and get them cooler and cooler so that maybe they could overwinter in my climate. And so unfortunately, with business and moving and things like that, I never really took that project to fruition. But the way that would go would be the ones that did get sick, they come in, you don't just drop them into a main display tank, right? You're like, okay, I got to quarantine them. They got sick. You treat them back up. And in theory, those would be the ones that I would want to breed next season. And if I continually do that process, I think that's how we get to more cool temperature tolerant fish. I think that's what happened with guppies and so many species over the years. And I also think we're experiencing the opposite of that. So as we buy fish from hot countries, which we do for the most part because it's cheaper, if you have free heat, that's not a cost that goes into making the fish, which means the fish is cheaper at the store, which means we're more likely to buy it as a consumer. And so I think we experience the opposite side of that, where fish are getting, I would say, more and more used to being warmer and wanting to be warm because they're more and more generations into that. There was someone I was just talking to where I think their fish room was a shed and they were getting upwards of 90, 95 on some of the tanks even, and the fish were still doing fine. Fish that like, oh, they weren't known to do that well in that hot temperature, but then they'd be cooling down at night. And so I do think that it goes both ways from my experience, and that the temperature tolerances are a lot wider than we see on paper or from a friend or anything like that. So much so that, my whole fish room will get down to 68 or so, and I literally can't tell a difference in the fish. But I don't push the whole fish room down further and further because it is my work, and it would look real bad if all of a sudden everything in my fish room was dead because 65 was the cutoff. And playing that game in front of the entire world isn't practical and shouldn't be done. Also, people will start doing what I'm doing, and I want to be able to explain how I got there, and it was over time. And but I do think you can do that in your ponds outside. And so that's what I've always done is bring what you think is sensitive in first, and then give yourself some to play with. I think your second, third, fourth, fifth years of doing that, you end up leaving them out longer. Also, weather patterns do change, from year to year, but um, it's not uncommon for me being busy to not bring stuff in till late September, early October here in Washington. Now, if you were, I don't know, somewhere where, like, I think I saw a couple weeks back, there's already like starting to be some dustings of snow. That's crazy, right? If I was in that kind of climate, I would obviously be treating it differently, but you might also be putting them out sooner. I have been fighting this sickness all week. I've been sleeping extra, I've been resting, had to take antibiotics, and then the infection kind of like got into my eyes, where my eyes were all bloodshot, and thought I was gonna get some conjunctivitis or something, but luckily didn't. And now I'm basically 90% good to go. So, but a little bit of phlegm going on still. So bear with me, please. Rogue tour at Candy's house while she's away for the day. Have I ever considered doing one of my fish hunting trips to Thailand? It's definitely on my list. India, Thailand. There's a few other places I can't think of off the top of my head, but yes. But I also I've hit the wall with traveling. I got to go to Australia still, and I know I say this every year, but I think I'm really sticking to it this year, of less travel, and especially these longer expedition type trips where even Australia is 11 days, but you got to add a little bit of travel time onto that and preparation time. And this last trip, when I came back uh from Brazil, I was telling my personal trainer, I was like, I think it took 6 weeks for me to be back and caught up. And it's because real life doesn't stop, right? So there was like a wedding that we hosted here. There was, the Kentucky trip with the event on the back of the Brazil trip, and all the things. And like, if you get sick, and so it took, so you're gone for almost a month, and then you've got 6 weeks after that. And when I look at that, it's like we've lost almost a quarter when it comes to my life or business, of going, wait, that's why this project's not ready to go, because I would have had a month, or not a month, like almost 3 months to be working on that and getting it further down the road. And so seeing that, I want to make sure that I'm not being away from home so much, because if when I add up the time, it gets to be a crazy amount. And so, not that I won't travel at all. I'm definitely trying to travel less and then less long trips that need more preparation and more time to get back in the swing of things when I get home. There's always like the jet lag, there's a little bit of the illness, there's a little bit of all the things that built up, all of those things. So, let's see here. I use tap water with no dechlorinator instead of tank water to clean sponges in my hang on back filters. I've got 26 tanks of fish and shrimp that I breed for the last 10 years with no problems. That's also been my experience. However, I have so my house right now, I'm on a well, so kind of no problem. Don't have chlorine. But at my previous house, there was little bits of chlorine, and at the store, there's trace amounts of chlorine. I've never run into a problem, but I've always erred on the side of caution when advising people. In a perfect world, it is better to use tank water than your sink. Um, but yes, your story is common like mine of like, I've never actually run into that problem. I actually think you could run into a little bit more problem with hot water, getting the water too hot while you're cleaning it. The other thing that I think should be said is when you use the water from your aquarium to clean something, you're also doing a partial water change. And I am a man of efficiency. I love when things are efficient. So using water out of the tank to clean my thing and then putting new water in, that's the peak of efficiency for me. So I do like that. However, maybe in the store scenario, time is the efficiency we're trading on. And so um and getting it really clean sometimes. That's why I have a sprayer on my nozzle here in the fish room. Because the way I run my aquariums, when I do run pre-filter sponges, they're not the main bacteria thing. They're mostly a pre-filter for me, meaning it's going to catch food, it's going to keep lots of fry and shrimps out hopefully. It's going to keep plant leaves from getting pulled in. It's going to do all of that work. Snail shells or live snails, keep as much of that as I can out so that the canister or the hang on back can be the main biological filter that I'm actually running. And so being able to service, so the way I run it is the pre-filter, being able to service that easy and quickly means that I have to disrupt the biological filtration in whatever it is I'm running much, much, much less. Maybe I'm doubling the life of that of like, yeah, if I had to service my canister every 3 months, now I can service it every 6 months instead because I'm servicing the pre-filter. And I think in that context, it makes sense to take it to the sink. Now, I also do it with normal sponge filters because I don't have chlorine, but if I was relying only on sponge filters, I would hesitate if I had chloramine for sure or really high levels of chlorine. And by hesitate, I mean I would do testing. I am a person that tests everything, but I've learned that there's lots of people in the world that test nothing and they just go by like, yeah, it says this is what it's supposed to do. And so if you're one of those people, you know, use tank water. If you're a testing person, go ahead and, okay, I'm going to clean this row of fish tanks. This one I'm going to use the sink to do, and there's lower bio load, or I've got 2 filters in there, and just see if you see any visual differences. And if you do, then you know. If you don't, okay, well try some more, try 2 or 3 sponge filters this time that way. And over time you'll know like, hey, that's just your new move, or one time I did have a problem, I can trace it back to that. I don't do that anymore. We're gonna see a pond in my fish room with all the baby monster fish. Unlikely. Ponds don't show well on camera. They also aren't my favorite way to view fish. Given a choice, I'd rather look at them from the side. Even fish that are meant to be top viewed down. And so unlikely. Plus it plays havoc with humidity in the room. And when kids come by, family friends or anything like that, I don't want to have to worry about little kids getting in the pond or falling in the pond or, having an accident in the pond. And then same thing with my dogs. I don't want the dogs to be able to jump in or anything like that. And I don't see the appeal for me of having like a big pond that's tall with a viewing window. I would rather have it at normal viewing height where you can sit in a chair or stand and look into an aquarium. And they cost more money for sure, but that's my preferred thing. So, um, yeah, I would more than likely build a gigantic aquarium bigger than I have now if that's what I needed versus building a pond. Do I really culture mosquito larvae on purpose? Kind of, yeah. I do nothing to prevent it, but I don't go out of my way to encourage it. So the tanks that don't have fish, that have Daphnia, the mosquitoes just go, hey, there's water. I can lay larvae in here. If there's fish, the fish eat the larvae. But if there's no fish, they don't. And so I could use something like a mosquito dunk to prevent the larva. However, the larva is great fish food. And so I just harvest it when I harvest Daphnia. And, there is a use case for, or a talking point of like, yeah, but you're going to make mosquitoes. Well, we're making, I have 10 acres and there's water pockets everywhere, like half dried up creek. There's the Giganta pond. There's just water that settles after a rain. And so I don't think I'm contributing a lot to like local mosquito population with the ponds. Whereas I could maybe make an argument that I'm probably less mosquitoes because of the way we're developing our property and all those damselflies and the birds eating the mosquitoes. We can watch that happen. So, maybe I'm at a net neutral, but I don't go out of my way to specifically like, ooh, I'm going to try to make more mosquito larvae, but I do not curb it at all. And I definitely utilize it. And yeah, I think it's I think it's a useful thing for a fish room. Lori says, I asked because I have a 5-gallon infusoria bucket that I'm thinking about moving it outside. Yeah, I think if you're being at all reasonable and you're like, hey, I tried to scoop mosquito larvae out of there once or twice a week, I don't think you're gonna make enough that it would ever matter to neighbors and things. Like if you walk up and down your neighborhood, a lot of times I'll see just a million things of like, that's making mosquito larvae. You might see someone that's got, some tires in their side of their house or backyard or whatever, and they're swapping them or doing like just something like that, like the water in the bottom of a tire, that's mosquitoes. There's so many, oh, they've got a little dish of water to feed the birds, like that's mosquito larvae. Like it's happening everywhere. And so, um, yeah, I don't go out of my way to make them, but I'm also not trying to curb them because I do utilize them. I'm hatching baby brine with huge success, all with Aquarium Co-op products. My first attempt at breeding Bozeman rainbows is doing well. The fry are nice and plump. Awesome. The sooner you can get them onto a dry food, the sooner your life gets easier, but it's a long road, at least for me and the people I talk to. Growing rainbows out, oof, it takes so long. Once they get to a point where they can, I want to say like once they're like this big, it doesn't feel nearly as bad, and I swear they grow faster, but I think it's just because you can actually see like, hey, the fish is doing fish things instead of like, why are you still so small? Can I use a clown pleco to clean algae on the glass, or do they prefer eating woods and algae wafers and sinking pellets? And are they very normal? Are they very normal for them to hide a lot in a 10-gallon? Uh, so one, a clown pleco is mostly a meat eater. So that's maybe why you'd see them eating algae wafers. Most algae wafers' first ingredient will be like a fish meal. Can they be used in a 10-gallon? They can. They're not my favorite, but they are one of the smaller plecos that you can actually get your hands on, so that's nice. And are they reclusive? Yeah, they are. They don't like a lot of light. If you can get a lot of floating plants or turn the light down or build a lot of cave structure, you'll get to see them a little bit more. But I would say the big thing to know is keep feeding them algae wafers and things and cleaning the tank. And the reason I mention that is oftentimes people will feed a lot of algae wafers, and proportionally to the tank size, they don't realize how much food's going in. So, like, let's say you do like a pinch of flake and it visually looks like a ton of food. But then the same person will put like 2 or 3 algae wafers in and not realize that's 10 to 20 times as much food by weight. And so I don't think I ever really did a good video on it outside of just like, hey, I'm playing around in the fish room. But visually, the difference between the pinch of food versus algae wafers versus frozen food, when you line them all up, they look so dramatically different, and yet they'd all be the same if you do it by weight. And so I think it's easy for our human brains to just go, well, I'm just feeding one algae wafer. It's one. One's a small number. But the reality is, like, the weight of that much food is a lot, maybe for a 10-gallon, especially when you can put in 2, 3, 4, 5 algae wafers, the snails and the plecos and the shrimp are gobbling them up. It's still a decent amount going into maybe a 5 or a 10-gallon. And so that's where I would say, yeah, if you're feeding algae wafers and things, pair it with gravel vacuuming and other stuff on some kind of uh, normal cadence. Is there a trick to keep baby brine shrimp live longer in the hatchery? After hatching, what is the average life expectancy? It's expected that you would harvest and then feed that day. If you want to go past that, sometimes making new brine shrimp water, getting out all of the brine shrimp that you have, you can put it back in there and bubble it for like another day or two. There's some methods where people keep them strained into salt water and then in the fridge. I have taken small amounts and grown them all the way to adults in the thing just to prove that I could do it. I think the wisdom I would pass to someone is make what you need for like a day, maybe 2, and not much more than that. Otherwise, go to a much different system where it's like, oh, I've got a saltwater pond and I've got the adults and they're giving birth to live babies and they're doing things. Yeah. Yet again, I'm here to make my case to Dorcula to come on the Planted and Enchanted live stream Friday at 5 Central. All the cool kids are doing it. I asked my wife, or asked Dorcula about that, I don't know, like a month or 6 weeks ago, and she's like, I just don't think I want to do it. Like, I don't have anything to bring to the conversation. And I said, well, yeah, I don't know. They're asking, and so I don't know if my wife ever will, which is absolutely fine, by the way. I pressure her none. Hello, Corey. I'm back to the hobby. I took a year break as I moved and got promoted from my job in finance. What have I missed? Hmm. I don't think a whole lot, honestly. It's kind of everyone's still keeping fish. Everyone's still doing their thing. I think YouTube's changed a little bit. I think the world has changed a little bit, but otherwise, nature's still doing nature things. If you're, you got a chance to try new things, that's what the hobby is for me. I think it's the same. I used to put my leftover baby brine shrimp in the fridge for a day or two. They go dormant and sit at the bottom so baby Cory cats can munch on them for a bit. Yeah. Um, one of my favorite things to hear is when Corey says you just need to do it so you prove you could do it. I do have it's a blessing and a curse of the I trust nobody, that trust but verify. I'm 900% the verify because lots of well-respected people in the industry and people mentors I've looked up to and everything. I found so many instances where I take what they've done as like that's the way to do a thing, and then somewhere in my career I challenge that, and then I go, what they were doing totally works, but these other ways of doing the same thing totally work. And then I don't know, maybe half the time I prefer a different method to getting to the same spot. And so uh yeah, I basically assume nothing at this point in my life. annoyingly so, I'm sure, to Randy and Zenzo and everybody around me of like, we all can't agree that this is a tube of super glue, but like, but how do we know it's actually super glue in there? Like, what if they, what if somehow this one was a misprint at the factory? Like, it's yeah. So every answer, and it drives Randy nuts, is assuming X, Y, and Z. Yes, I agree to this. He's like, can't you just tell me? And it's like, I could, except if one of those things get missed, my answer changes. So oftentimes when we're working on a product or something, I know what the perfect product is in my mind, but that is always shaded or colored by the cost. Because if the perfect product, maybe the product's in the market right now is $20, and the perfect product built the way Corey wants it is 65. That's not going to work. So then, oftentimes, not often, always, I'm asking, how much is each part? And it's very annoying to the companies and people that work with me because I'm trying to find what are the parts that are essential to a thing and what are the things that are not essential, so that can I get what I want at a price people will afford and are willing to pay. And sometimes the answer literally comes back as that is impossible. We can't do it, and we just don't do it and we move on. Um, but oftentimes there'll be a thing of like, oh, okay, see this? We don't have to have that like that. And what happened was, I think this is going to live in my psyche forever, is that when we were doing bio rings and we were at the factory and they were making things up real time. So like we were eating lunch and stuff, and we'd say, hey, I think I want it like this. And they'd have someone in the factory running it. And so we we're getting these prototypes and how much would this cost and how much would that cost and this and that. And it turned out, so how do you get the perfect bio rings, right? Like there's not much to change about bio rings other than like how many, right? How many bio rings? What are the size of bio rings? And then like what do you put them in, right? They could be in like the oldest Fluval bags, deteriorated after like 2 years. They got real brittle and fell apart, and I didn't want that. So I was like, okay, I want a good bag with good flow, not too fine so it gunks up, and then a zipper. And we went round and round and round. And this is over the course of like 2 hours, right? Just on working on bio rings. I mean, there's other stuff you're waiting on a sample to come back, so you're talking about something else, but a couple hours. And it turned out that the plastic zipper thing was more expensive than the bag and all the bio rings combined. And so, because we kept coming back to like, why is the price so expensive though? Like, we're at the manufacturer, we'll be importing, we're paying the tariffs, like all of this going on. Like, this is basically the price that if I was going to buy from another company. Like, I don't get it. So then we had to go like, how much are the bio rings? How much is this? And then it was the stupid zipper that was more expensive than everything else combined. And what I didn't understand is that it was cheaper to just sew the bag closed because they had to sew the zipper in, right? So instead of sewing twice and buying the physical zipper that had to be plastic so it wouldn't rust underwater, that was way more than just doing a quick, like, you got to be precise when you're putting in the zipper. Otherwise, you drop the bio rings in, and you basically just run it across the thing, and it sews it closed. And so now that's why everything, I have to know the price of everything, because what if there's something that you assume has to be cheap? Like in our minds, I assume, and I think most people would, of course bio rings have to be the most expensive part. It's the thing you're buying. But what if it turned out Diet Coke that the expensive part is the can? And you're like, well, what's the cheapest thing we could put it in then? I would just drink it out of that. Like that, I'm not loyal. I'm not married to the idea of the can. That's just the thing that happens to come with. Let's see here. Hillstream loaches, are they the best at eating algae like brown diatom algae and green dust algae? And what sinking food can they eat after the algae is gone? I don't know that you could crown them the best. They're decent at eating that. I think it seems, and I don't want to judge too harshly here, but it seems like you might be new to aquatics a little bit. And the one thing I'll point out is almost every algae eater, if they're doing well at your algae, like you've lined up the right algae eater with the right kind of algae, for the most part, they will eat that in like less than 24 hours. And so when you're buying an algae eater, you're mostly buying a pet or an animal, right? And so it's good to be asking what would they eat, because you're going to spend the majority of its life feeding it as opposed to it eating off of the aquarium. And so things that do well for fish like that would be sometimes you can get them onto wafers. They seem to eat just fine normal fish foods in my experience. And then Repashy works well also. You could be doing zucchini and cucumbers and all of that, but I would go into it with, is this an animal you want to keep because it looks cool? Which reticulated hillstream loaches, plenty of people keep them because they're awesome, not because they eat algae. Um, and in something like a 10-gallon, you have limited space, right? So I would keep it as an animal you want to keep. And then if it eats some of the algae, that's a great bonus. Otherwise, go for like the smallest things you can find. Snails typically are a pretty small bio load. An autosynclus, they're much harder to feed after you run out of algae, though. So let's see. Why'd we discontinue lights and heaters? Two completely different reasons. With the lights, manufacturer stopped making them. They wanted to focus on uh not horticulture. Is it horticulture? Hydroponic lights and things? Yeah, hydroponics. They also, I don't know where they're at right now, but they were also caught up in the tariff situation. So, like, it's kind of hard to work with companies right now because tariffs are so crazy that they don't want to like do all of the work, and then tariffs change, and then now we're not placing an order. And it's not us, but just like the world in general. Like it's a little bit hectic. And so you don't want to get out of your comfort zone and do something, a big project, just to go, oh, that's not actually going through. We invested. And so with the light manufacturer, they, with tariffs and things, they were working on opening a plant. I think it was, if I remember right, in Thailand. And I think that got scrapped now because then Thailand got just as high of tariffs, and it didn't make sense to move production to another country to have the same problem. And so I'm not even sure where they're at in that realm. With the heaters, it was because it was ruining our reputation. And I always want to qualify that because it sounds like, oh, they were selling a terrible product. And some people would say that for sure. But we know from our data, our heaters were getting better and better. And to date, I still believe they're the best heater we've ever sold. And some stores would agree. The failure rates on heaters are always a thing. And the story I'm going to tell, choose to believe it or not, I'm in a weird space where I ran into too many people crapping on Corey from Aquarium Co-op this week. So I'm in that headspace of like anything I say is gonna be twisted out of context and made to make me look bad. But um I believe that we crushed our own product with our openness to the public. And so what that means is we were selling a stupid amount of heaters, just like way better than our projections could have ever predicted. They were a good price. They were being adopted widely. And they tattled on themselves. They were high tech. They tattled on themselves. And so when it went bad, it would say, "Hey, here's E3, E2, H4," and these were all different error codes. And the error code would let customer service and us know, how did this thing go wrong? Is it uh, uh, detecting different temperature? Is it detecting moisture? Is it end of life? So I'll chalk some of it up to our mistakes and some of it to the world wasn't ready. And so like the end of life thing, knowing this is Corey trying to predict, what the consumers will like, and I predicted wrong, I think here. And that is that knowing that all heaters will break at some point. It's not a thing you can buy that will last the end of time. They have a limited lifespan. Just like if you went and bought a water heater. We all know your water heater in your house isn't going to last forever, and at some point it will break. My idea was, hey, how about we know that after a couple years is when the likelihood starts that it could break. So we'll have a thing that basically shows that you're at end of life, watch it more frequently. And in the first generation that came up with, it was blinking like, I think it was E1 or something. And that was annoying. And we go, yep, that was annoying. And in fact, that shipped incorrectly from the manufacturer. We didn't want that, but it had already been programmed to all the motherboards, and there was like kind of nothing we could do at that point. So we're like, that sucks a little bit, but it still works fine. It's fine. So then the next version that came out, it was an LED that would light up. So it was like a yellow LED that just said, hey, we're after the time, watch this heater more frequently. It's not that it went bad, even though people interpret it like this is bad. It's not bad. It was more of a warning light to, hey, just make sure you look at this every month and make sure it's not going bad. And then we had error codes for like when things would actually go wrong. And so this is where I think we actually made the mistake of letting the customer know what went wrong and putting it in their face. So the average heater is a nondescript heater. You put it in your tank, and at some point it will boil your fish or be freezing cold. And that's when you know it doesn't work anymore. Like that's the normal heater experience. Our heater, though, would tell you when it started to get out of alignment. And so if it was set to 78 degrees and your heater or your water temperature was 78.2, it'd start like flashing, right? And so then we would get lots of people that would not have access to their directions, whether they threw it away or they didn't look on the website. They would post to like our Facebook group and other groups and things like that and just say, hey, my heater is showing this error. And if you weren't a person that knew what the errors meant, or you didn't own one of our heaters, you're just going, oh, wow, I sure do see a lot of people posting, asking what this code is on the heater. It must be defective. And so over time, that was becoming, yeah, I see a lot of those. What people didn't see was, you're right, 2% I think at the actual end of everything, including every dollar we refunded to people and everything, we were at 2.5%. Let's call it return rate, defect rate, broken in shipping rate. That encompassed all of that, which was far lower than any other heater we've ever sold and that we can buy today, including heaters that we sell on the website today. And it wasn't worth the bad publicity of like Aquarium Co-op's is selling heaters that have higher fault rates, even though that wasn't true from our analytics, to tank the rest of the brand. So it was much easier to go, we just won't sell heaters. Just be done with them. We're done selling heaters, even though they were getting better. And I don't think we'll ever sell a heater again because it's just the amount of stress to do it right is nearly impossible. And so I think as a company, we've decided, let's not sell anything with our name on it that is the livelihood of the animal, or it can have the catastrophic failure. So things that can have catastrophic failure, CO2 system, medications, heaters, those are the big ones. I think I go back and forth on filtration because you can double up filtration pretty easily, and it's not, not that big of a deal. The best heater on the market is a lid. I agree. Lids, everyone should have a lid on their tank. Let's see. I went back to the Aquarium Co-op website after a while. I was surprised how many things have been added. Just made another $130 purchase. Can't wait for the new free shirt. Yeah, right now we're adding slowly over time lots of super boring products. Like one of the next ones will be vinyl tubing in one size. That goes well, it'll be the rest of the sizes. But even people on my team are like, vinyl tubing? And I'm like, it's kind of an essential thing for aquariums. Like, you need vinyl tubing if you're redoing hoses on a cancer filter, if you're working with any of the sumps, if you're plumbing in and making anything. And so yeah, we also added a whole parts section. There's a lot of not very fun products that we just need good. We need good, I don't know about alternatives. We need good sources for them. I'm tired of playing the Amazon lottery to go, will I get something that's usable or is this terrible? And I want to say it's like 60-40, 60% good, 40% like, no, this is not going to do what I need to do at all. Any tips for trying to help Val runner plants get to the substrate from the easy planter? Uh, the only thing you can really do is let it grow long enough and then just plant it with like some tweezers. But it also can technically go out from bottom and do it, but that takes a long time. Oh, that's okay. So there's actually another tip too, which not as applicable, but you could create a mound of substrate around the easy planter and then it would be more likely to hop into it. However, at that point, you're kind of getting to the point where you're like, you're negating the purpose of using an easy planter. Maybe you just plant that in the substrate, which I would kind of go back to. If your goal is to spread throughout the whole tank, you might just be better off taking out of the easy planter and planting it into the substrate. However, you're going to kind of reset that uh like break-in period. Like whenever you get a plant that comes to your tank, it takes a while for it to adjust, takes a while for it to go, hey, I'm going to feed off the water column, or I'm going to do it out of the roots, or I need to orient where my roots are. And if you take it out of the the pot now, it's going to go through that reorientation for a couple weeks. So you got to weigh whether that's like, oh, in 2 weeks to me, I lose that all the time. We're like, oh gosh, it's been 2 weeks, so not so bad. But if it's your first tank and you're waiting for it to go in, 2 week setback seems like forever. Let's see here. I've been dipping my toes into saltwater. I'm considering making a refugium using one of my aquarium co-op lights. Yeah, saltwater was always a phase for me. Super interesting, never held my attention super long term. I don't know exactly why, because there's some amazing fish. I love the mechanical side of it, but um, I think it's the way. I don't like the fact that you can't neglect a saltwater tank, I guess, is what I feel like. Like you could be sick, you could go on vacation, you could have all these things. Like if these were all saltwater tanks, they'd be all in different realms of disaster. And I don't like that. I'm ready to place my next $125 order. The co-op t-shirts are so nice. They're my favorite t-shirts that I own. They hold up so well. Yeah, I need to place an order of shirts. Probably a size down, and then I've worn them so much that they're actually seeing wear on them. One of them I was wearing while weed eating, and it got all stained with like green grass dust, and yeah, I just haven't. I haven't ordered any new ones yet. Are they going to be black vinyl tubes? So far we're starting with just clear. We've sampled and played with clear and what do they call it? Threaded vinyl? What do they call it? Reinforced vinyl. Do I have any here? Or are they over at the testing station? I think they're at the testing station. But we did consider and talk about black as well, and we kind of went down the rabbit hole, right? That's normally how conversations go. Hey, we want to do a thing. What about all these things? Okay, that doesn't make sense where we start though. So what do we start with? Okay, we'll start with the most common size 5/8 clear tubing. From there, if they do a good job with that, we'll expand that to other sizes. If they do a good job with that, we'll also add in reinforced. If they do a good job with that, we'll see if there's an appetite for black vinyl tubing. And what we find, or what I find, is most of the time, let's say you need a piece of tubing and you walk into that Home Depot. If they have it, you're just going to buy it. If they have normal and reinforced, you're still going to buy one piece of tubing. If they have normal, reinforced, and black, you're still going to have one piece of tubing. And so, just like our sponge filters, where we have fine sponge filters, we have coarse sponge filters, we have green sponge filters, and we have black sponge filters, what we see here is the sales overall are the same. We've basically just increased our costs, or our holding costs, by 4x, but the sales are basically flat. So even though you'll see people say, I would only ever buy this version, I would only ever do this thing, when we add it all up, it's like, but it's still just the same, because what we say and what we do as humans are usually two different things. There are people that will stick to their guns for sure. But then there's also like, I went there to buy the thing. They didn't have the exact thing I wanted, so I bought the thing that was almost the thing I wanted, and then it turns out that was fine. So we'll see if a real need arrives for 3 different of the same size tubing. I kind of doubt it, but I've been wrong before, so I will see. Do I see the freshwater side of the hobby adopting saltwater sides, use of controllers, dosing gear, auto top-offs? Seems useful, but also spendy. Is it too bougie? I do think it's too bougie. I think the reason... So I think the tech does get adopted, but I think it's only by the same user. And so what I mean by that is, if you have a cichlid, I'm just going to use a cichlid person. It's not always a cichlid person, but it could be a planet tank person. It doesn't matter. The demographic being the one aquarium person, the person that wants to own one aquarium, but they want it to be the best. Money is no object. You know, I remember a guy that wanted the best planet tank. He had a 120-gallon tank. It kept us buying more and 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 more lights. I think he was up to like 8 of the Fluval lights, because he was convinced that it had to be more light, because it couldn't have been the CO2, because he had a drop checker and he had auto dosers and he had the things. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you just have too much light. You keep putting more light on there and not getting the result you want. And all he cared about was that the drop checker would read 28 parts per million. He literally didn't care what the plants looked like. He just wanted, his plants were fine and doing well, but he wasn't getting an artificial metric that he wanted. Anyway, where I was going with that is, the freshwater hobby, it can be cheaper to get into, but then also it's cheaper to run multiple tanks. So let's pick 3 aquariums. 3 aquariums is going to be much cheaper to run in freshwater on average than saltwater, because of gadgets. You don't need protein skimmers. You don't need expensive lighting for all of them. You don't need so many of the things, right? Even the fish are cheaper. However, if you had the same, let's say you had a budget of let's call it $3,000, $2,000, something like that. You could definitely buy all the gadgets, and you could put like a Neptune automation system on your freshwater tank. You could have dosers. You could do all of that. You totally could. But I think people don't, because they end up running multiple tanks. And so if you're going to run multiple tanks, it kind of doesn't make as much sense to have one really tricked out and the other one's not. In general, people tend to, they want uniformity, myself included. Like, oh, I really like this system, so I want my system to have all of these now. And then when you go like, oh, but this system's $500, it doesn't make sense for me to put a $500 system on my 10-gallon. Macroalgae would do great in a low-tech tank. You're right. And if people wanted saltwater for that, they would do that. Except the average person that gets into an aquarium, freshwater or not, they just want crazy amounts of color. That's, working at a cichlid store, African cichlid store, they literally would just be like, I just want all the color. That's all I want. And I think that's a very primitive thing that our brains want. Like, I want it to look really cool, whether it's lots of pretty colors, whether it doesn't matter what it is. Like, our brain's wired, I want it to look cool. And saltwater fish do look cool. African cichlids do look cool. There's a lot of cool freshwater fish. If we, macroalgae, I think they look really cool because I look at them from the freshwater standpoint going, that plant, that like red flame algae looks sweet. Like Caulerpa looks sweet. But it's so commonplace in saltwater that they're not seeing it as, oh, that's sweet. Like I love Kenya trees. And people are just like, those are like the most basic, bland thing. And I'm like, yeah, they're dope though. So I don't know where I was really going with that other than, yeah, anything can be done. And I think we're colored too much with the internet this day and age. So when I was talking about the heaters and the lights and stuff, I actually used today, in fact, I used that as an example with someone in the company. They were talking about, they were looking at a car and the car had a decent amount of problems and reviews, and it happens to be a car I own. And the example I used was, I think we're at a point where what's happening with this car or everything I see now is the problem we had with the heaters. That it's become so easy to find negative reviews of a product that it's problematic for everybody, including the consumer, because we haven't recalibrated our brains. What I mean by that is, on average, if you do a good job, people don't leave a review. When something goes wrong is when we must take to the internet and leave bad reviews and let everybody know. And what I think is happening at a mass scale for every product on the planet is that it's become, you can take any product and you can say like, I'm trying to think of something that would make sense to, I don't know. I can't think of, like, let's take this Yeti container, right? Like, known to be high end. I would wager a decent amount of money that if I Googled Yeti, what is this thing? A tumbler? No, it's not a tumbler. What do you call this thing? This water bottle thing. You would find negative reviews about it. And so where I'm going with this is, if you go seek the negative reviews, you're gonna find them about every product on the planet. If you seek the positive reviews, you're also gonna find that. But our brains, like, I don't know what the ratio is, but it would seem like, I know for me, and that's how I know, I think a lot of people are susceptible to this. I can look at a listing. I could have 5,000 reviews, but if 26 of them are bad and I read through them and I'm like, ooh, yeah, ooh, this sounds like that. Like, how good someone writes a negative review. If you write a really good, convincing negative review, I don't want to buy that product anymore, even though there could be thousands of other positive reviews. And so what can happen is, it's the best, the most convincing story wins. And so if I read a really convincing negative review and I read 50 positive reviews, they're like, great, love it, great, love it, great, love it, great, love it. Those aren't convincing. They're just little metric points. And I think because of the way the internet has now become, it's so easy to find it, that our brains aren't catching up, and we're basically not following statistics, because we can convince ourselves they're buying reviews, they're doctored, they're fake. We know we have competitors that hide negative reviews. And so, like, it's easy to trick your brain into, yeah, but. And so, as I was talking with this person, I said, I own this vehicle and I have none of these problems. Yes, I'm only one use case. Yes, I have seen all the negative press, but also I haven't experienced any of it. And I'm a pretty critical person when it comes to products. And so I do think it's a case of, if you go looking for negative reviews of things, you'll find it. I also think that negativity in online space right now just wins. We can see it with YouTube, we can see it with headlines, we can see it with journalism, everywhere you look. And it's been proven a million studies over that if you bring negativity to the thing, it will get more clicks than not. And if you haven't looked into this, the basic principle is this. If I say, let me think. I'm trying to think of a way to do this like peanut butter or something common. Peanut butter is the best thing ever. It's got a great fat to protein ratio if it's not made with Jif. But take that same headline and peanut butter kills people. This country hates peanut butter. And it just, because then you'll be like, yeah, of course, people in the UK and Europe basically don't know what peanut butter is. When you go to somewhere, like if I'm in a European country and they have peanut butter, like this doesn't even taste like peanut butter. Like no wonder you don't like peanut butter. But the way you approach that headline, the more negativity you give it, it will draw on the people that both like peanut butter and the people that hate peanut butter. Because if you like it, you're going, hey, that doesn't sound right. Like peanut butter isn't killing 1 out of 2 Americans every day. That's not correct at all. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to prove them wrong. And then you've got the people that do hate peanut butter. And they're going, yeah, see, it's killing 1 out of 2 Americans. That aligns with what I thought. And so the negativity part pulls in both sides. The positivity part, if you just go, hey, peanut butter without too much sugar is a great, cheap source of food. No one really clicks in on that. You already got to like want to read about that to know that. But if you love peanut butter, you don't necessarily go, oh, I better prove them wrong. And if you hate peanut butter, you don't give it a second look. And so that in aggregate through online internet, every marketer, everything is basically found that will always work worse than the negative headline. So that's why I think we see everything is just negative, because it's like if the currency is the view, and a negative connotation to the headline will get more views, it's always in the best interest to do the negative thing to get more views. If you're a journalist, if you're a marketer, it doesn't matter what it is, if your currency is the view, the more views you get, the more maybe you're going to get a raise, or you're going to keep your job, or you're going to sell more ads, or you're going to do more things. And so, yeah, it's a weird time. And I don't think our brains are recalibrated to that of like, hey, if everything is negative, we need to look for the positive things and dig into that more than the opposite. Because for most of my life, it was like, yeah, look for the bad reviews, look for the bad things, because they weren't so easy to find always. They were seemingly more hidden. Petco's Imaginarium brand fish tank get lots of talk over having negative reviews. Do we think these tanks are actually poor quality, or is this a craze of negative reviews in a way? I don't know, because I haven't done my own testing. I'll say this. Over the years, in fact, the tanks I have sitting over here are the same way. I've bought many dollar-a-gallon tanks. And on average, I want to say I average like maybe 1 out of a couple hundred would leak. Here's what I don't know is when you have a bad experience, you tell, like the metric, I don't know if it's still true, but on average, you tend to tell people when you have a bad experience. When you have a positive experience, it's less than one person you'll tell. And so here's the picture I want to paint around this. If we rewind 20 years and we're now on forums, most of you in the chat probably weren't. You just went to your local clubs, you did your things, like whatever it was, you just wouldn't have been in the forums. Like it was less popular. So when someone had a bad tank experience with buying a mass-produced tank, they'd post it and go, hey, this wasn't a good experience. And a small portion of people go, hey, that was a bad experience, this person, I now know that. However, now when you have that bad experience and it hits your Facebook and it hits your Facebook groups, and maybe you post it to Reddit, or maybe it gets shared onto Reddit, now that same thing is maybe seen by 100x as many people, right? And so in our in the back of our brain, we're seeing that there's more bad tanks. It literally may be the same defect rate for the last 100 years on tanks, except now we're seeing a disproportionate amount of them. And so I know there's a term for this, and I can't remember what it's called, but basically there's like a selection bias or like a data bias where the way the data is presented, it makes you form an opinion that is incorrect because you don't know the data that's already been omitted. And so what I'm trying to go with this is, let's say 1 in 1,000 aquariums had a failure from a Magitarium, right? Today, we might log in and you look at the reviews and you go, wow, there's 500 negative reviews on their tanks, right? Over the last 3 years. But what we're not seeing is how many aquariums were sold. And I think if you had seen like, oh wow, it's 0.01% tanks are leakers when you buy them, you'd be like, well, I accept those odds. That's fine. There's still be some people that wouldn't. There are some people that they will only buy a product that has no faults. You run into those people once in a while, you're like, that's not realistic though. Like, you're literally just gonna buy new untested things if that's like, I want to know the failure rate. I want to know, yeah, 1 out of 1,000 is gonna break. Like, oh, that's really good odds for me. Look up, see how many aquariums are sold in the US last year. Let's see here. Okay, so 2 different data points. I don't know the legitimacy of these, but basically they're saying on average in the US, about 1,000,000. Well, hold on, let me make sure that's right. It just seems too high. I know I thought the number was more in the hundreds of thousands of tanks a year. Mm, I don't like. I want to find something I can feel like I could trust. I'm already doing it. I don't trust this. Because I'm in these studies where they ask retailers and they're not conclusive, I feel like. But for the sake of this argument, right? Like, I'm sure there's better data out there, but it's saying that roughly there's 1,000,000 aquariums being sold in the US every year, which seems too high to me. Because I remember being more like, I want to say like 4 to 600,000 depending on the year. But with that many, let's say there is 1 out of 1,000, right? I mean, that's hundreds, if not 1,000 negative reviews hitting the internet of like, my aquarium leaked or blew up or did a thing. And when you think about that, that's if it's 1,000, right? That's 3 every day. Every day, 3 people might be posting online, hey, my aquarium broke loose. This aquarium company is terrible, without without the context. A great example, a Magitarium 75-gallon middle bracket is sketchy looking because it's easy to break if anything goes wrong. I think that's part of this conversation of, you see the bad reviews, then you see something that you think is questionable and you dogpile that on. Where I can rewind, and in my opinion, all center braces are terrible. Like, the amount that have broken over the years that I've seen are very high, but also the amount of aquariums set up improperly are just as high. The average person does not level their aquariums properly at all. They might level the stand. Almost nobody that I see re-levels their aquarium after 1, 3, and 7 days. So you set it up on carpet, you fill it up with water, maybe put a level on it's level. Well, 3 days from now, it has settled more, it won't be leveled. 7 days from now, it'll settle even more, it won't be level. because it's a real pain to drain it down and shim it again and then fill it up with water and then go, oh, I shimmed it too much. Drain it again. Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like we focus on aquariums and leaks and things like that because when they go bad, they're so catastrophic. And but the average person doesn't do a good job when setting up an aquarium, even when they think they are. They don't, because it's too hard to factor in all the things. Like I'm going to set up against a wall because it's a exterior wall. It's stronger, it can hold the weight, but I'm not factoring in the carpet tack that's underneath the carpet that won't settle at the same rate the carpet pad will. So always have a forward lean to it. I'm not factoring. There's so many things that, the type of stand you set up. I've never built a DIY stand that didn't suck. Meaning that there is always some potato chip to it and some leveling to be done. Every stand I've ever bought, including stands of several thousands of dollars, have never been absolutely true. There's always been different flex to them or a little bit of a crown somewhere. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah, I didn't even know about the leveling and shimming. Yeah, if you look at tanks, and I know this from setting up a store, like when we set up the tanks at the store originally, we built all the uprights. Every tank we put where we thought we wanted the supports to go, right? And we clamped those. And then we put a bullseye level in the center of the tank. So not a traditional level that you'd be doing this and then maybe front to back. It was a 360-degree level. And we sat there and leveled it perfectly. And it took a long time. And then we drilled through, then we ran the leg bolts, and we did all that stuff. And even with doing all of that, there was still shifting a tiny bit that occurred when there was weight on the entire system, and things that were 100% true metal fabricated. Once weight was on them, was slightly different, and you get these little gaps. And so yeah, there's a million little things that can go into it. Then there's the whole like your house is just gonna settle over time. That will just happen. And so it's part of the reason why if I'm going to buy a home, I want to buy a used home that already has the cracks in the driveway and the things, because a brand new home, it is just going to develop those cracks. It always will. Ask any builder, ask any person that puts driveways down, does a thing. I would much rather see where the faults are going to be than buy something brand new and then witness the faults and go, ooh, I wish that wasn't there. That's a worse way to fail. So, yeah, I didn't know about bullseye levels. That's exactly why I appreciate the channel. I'm sure there's 5 steps further than I've taken it to go as well. And that's, when we're setting up tanks here in the studio or at the store, we're using laser levels that self-level. We're using things like bullseye levels. We're using 8-foot long levels. And so like the 800 gallon, it's literally a case of fill it, get as level as we can, fill it up, check the level and go, okay, I think it's about a 32nd of an inch off. Let's drain it. Let's adjust the adjustable feet. Let's do it again. And it's because we have like rubber flooring down. It can compress at a certain rate. The floors are never 100% level. And in small tanks, you don't notice it as much because they're not as heavy. They don't compress as much. And then also a 10-gallon tank left to right, 20 inches, right? You start getting 8 feet long, and a 32nd of an inch all the way at the other end is like, hey, why is it this far off? And the other side's this far off. And a 10-gallon would be like this far and this far. You wouldn't even notice it. But at the same time, you can become paralyzed in indecision and like it's not perfect. And the reality is most aquariums are built to have all of that kind of factored in of like, they're never going to be 100% level. And, the rims of tanks with the center braces, yeah, they help add some support there. But at the same time, we're probably breaking tons of rules of, like, letting him get too warm, letting, oh, I lean on it a little bit when I'm doing maintenance, all of these types of things. My cat jumps up on it, so the weight from your cat being on top of it, yeah, you've got the glass tops, but then that center brace, it was never meant to have a downward force on it. But we all go like, "Yeah, but my cat's been doing it for, like, 5 years, 10 years, fine." It is fine until one day it's not. We're like, "Oh, it's starting to crack there." And so, an aquarium manufacturer or a product manufacturer, they're trying to make something that'll hold up to the test of time of in all these situations they can. And what we're gonna see is the million different ways it breaks. And so, I would ask, like, there's no way we'll ever know, but how many times is a cat sits on top of warm light, which is on top of glass tanks or glass tops, which is on top of that center brace, which leads to the extra stress, which leads to the crack, which leads to the failure. But instead, it's like, Maggitarium or Oceanic or whoever, their tank broke loose on me. But we just don't, the person won't know that it's actually the cat. It's actually the way you stored it when you moved. It's actually this thing that happened. It's actually that thing that happened. But we only ever get what we think happened. At the end of an accident, we get, here's what I think happened. That's why there's always a million sides to a story. I spent hours leveling the 55, just gave up and accepted when I got it, being 1/8 of an inch off of the center, corner to corner. Yeah. And the reality is that aquarium's probably going to be fine forever. Probably. The odds are in your favor. It's kind of like driving or flying or whatever. It's like the accident rate's never going to be zero. So at some point, you have to accept, I'm willing to accept this risk. I'm going to drive probably my whole life, knock on wood, and never die to an accident. The odds are in my favor that that won't happen. But if you were like, that the odds have to be zero, it's like, great, you can never get in a car again. And that would be a way to prevent you ever dying in a car crash. However, we all have to accept some risk if we want to do that. Just like your aquarium, like people would ask all the time in the store, how can I make sure it could never ever fail? And I go, there's no one that could ever tell you that. And if they are, they're lying to you. There's no way anybody can say, I can guarantee this aquarium will never fail. You can't. And so you can get as close as you can to not failing, but there's still always that chance. Whether it's manufacturer defect, whether it's earthquake, whether it's kid was hanging off it, whether dog jumped up to eat a treat that was being thrown and hits it. There's a million things that happen in real life every day where you're like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, but it happens every day to somebody. Uh, and so yeah, it's much easier to go, hey, I got it pretty darn close. That's probably, really, if you go, I spent more time than the average person, you're probably in a better spot. That's really what it comes down to. Because when things are manufactured, they're manufactured to the lowest common denominator. I know it drives people nuts in my team, but I'm like, someone's going to screw this up. We need to make it more easy, and let's design it so that when they do it wrong, it won't be catastrophic. You're like, yeah, but that means we have to change the design. We have to do this, we have to do that. I know, but how many bad reviews do we want to get because someone will do it wrong? And yeah. Let's see here. My 40 long 55, 65s have no center braces. Never have. Yeah, it depends on how the aquarium is set up. If you have thicker glass and not as tall, you usually don't need center braces. If you have thinner glass or you go taller, typically a center brace helps. Also, tanks over 4 feet typically have to have a center brace because it gets so hard to get tops that don't deflect a lot. So if you've ever they used to make aquariums this way, like 6-foot long aquariums with no center brace, that quarter thick, quarter inch glass would sag a bit because just such a long span. And so, some of it is like, I have to at a certain size. You got to get some bracing in there because otherwise you'd never be able to move a top. You're like, this 1-inch thick glass, so heavy, can't physically move it, can't open the top. It's crazy. It's a 3-person job. I've always assumed or hoped there would be a serious degree of over-engineering built into aquariums. There are. That's the thing. There is. That's why they're not failing all the time. You have to, like, I don't know. Think of like the dumbest person you know. They can go set up an aquarium and they'll have success. Like, we are over-engineering, overbuilding by a crazy factor. That's the thing. Let's see. Try and find a new topic to, instead of just talking about aquariums all day long. Okay, one more point. I will say the average home user, not home user, but just the average hobbyist is actively going against the engineering. I want my tanks to be rimless. I want to take out the fudge factor. There's no more top to help reinforce. There's no more bottom to help any imperfections in your stand. Like, yeah. So the reason why tanks have a top and bottom is to help those factors. Yeah. Which, like, our aquariums we produce, we still have we have rimless top because we stay with small aquariums, and we have curved glass. Like, I'm gonna go down a whole different rant here, but the bottom does have, it does have a rim so that we don't have people just busting aquariums left and right with slightly uneven surfaces. But our aquariums are one piece of glass that are bent. It's two less silicone joints that could ever fail even. It's a radius like that is way stronger, and your 2-year-old's not gonna bust their forehead open, all these things, but, what do I know? People still like, "Why do you have a bottom rim, you fool?" People say that until they sell aquariums, then you would be shocked at how many people go to set up an aquarium, have, like, a tiny piece of aquarium gravel or whatever on the stand, fill the tank up with water, and it just snaps and cracks. Yeah. What are my favorite plants to grow out of a tank? I really like water sprite, and then one that I was thinking about redoing again was bacopa. Bacopa looks really cool with the flowers you get off of it when it grows up out of the water. Where in the world are all the chili raspberries? They're seasonal and they become crazy popular. They're just now coming back into stock, so you're probably going to see them at all your pet stores right now. How can I make cloudy water disappear? You could watch one of our 5 videos on that. Uh, Determine whether it's white cloudy or green cloudy, and from there, a lot of times, it's pretty easy to, if it's green water, UV sterilizer, basically. There's gonna be someone in the chat that goes, "No, just do X, Y, and Z." Sure, do any of those, it's fine too. Or UV sterilizer and fix it. And then if it's a white cloudy, most often it will be just wait and it will fix itself. There are some exceptions, like you had crushed coral, you didn't rinse it enough, and you physically need to get most of it out, but usually it'll settle out also. But there are videos that are hour long that will show you examples and take you down that path and go, oh, okay. The easiest way, if you have white or green water, get yourself like a sour cream container or something, get a scoop of water. Does it have any green tint? No? Great. Probably bacterial. If it's green, probably algae. And from there, diagnose. And then also those videos will talk about trying not to replicate so it just comes back instantly. And yeah. Do I know the reason we stopped selling Bacopa caroliniana? Because we had multiple Bacopas, and in general, it had a slightly higher breakage rate from the farm to us, and so we're just like, yeah, let's just slim it down. They're not different enough for it to matter. Mm. How big of a deal is very hard water with high pH? Should I worry about it and try to fight it? I've always fallen in the camp, and I think I always will until something changes my mind. I will always say, just work with the water you got. Stop fighting it. My spiel's always been, unless there's a fish that you would give up the hobby for, like if I can't keep Epistos, I'm not gonna keep aquariums. Short of that, just keep the water you got. So like here, I have that problem. I have hard water. Epistos don't really want to breed for me. I can keep Epistos just fine. I can't breed them though. That's fine. I just move on to a different species and go, okay, all right, I guess not. I did change my water when I had too low of water, but it's an easier change. Just add crushed coral to a tank. Live bears do well. However, even still, I'm kind of preaching and want to make a video and preach more that even with hard water with high pH, I think all my hot take here that I think I could defend for a crazy long time would be all live bear tanks should just have crushed coral substrate, because at worst it does nothing. At best it helps any type of pH crash or alkalinity crash you could have. And so then I just see it of like, you know, there's a look factor to it, white versus whatever substrate you wanted. But in general, when I really think about it, I'm like, I think at worst it does nothing. At best, it saves people so many problems and solves so many of the things that people run into with live bears that I believe it would be worth it to just always say that. And that's really what the realm I play in is, if I think something helps 80% of all people, I'm just going to recommend that because I'm one of those people. I'm like, yeah, I think it's just purely better. There's always the corner case. There's always the 5% of like, somehow that could make it worse. I don't even know how that would be. And then there's like the other 15% of like, well, what about this, Corey? What about this crazy use case that most people don't have? Like, sure, in that case, I agree that it wouldn't be the best thing. But I could either recommend, here's a crazy way to choose the thing, or this one thing helps 85% of all people. You should just do that. Would I set up a tank for wild discus looking into breeding? Oh, how would I? How would I set up a tank for discus? I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but all my tanks are the same. I would literally just have gravel and then discus. And people would be like, what? You're crazy. In my experience, bringing in wild caught discus, they don't want the super elevated temperatures, so I wouldn't jack them up to 85. And two, they always, like, being from the wild, there's lots of mulm and lots of crap all around. Like, not that I've go out of my way to make it mulmy and look bad, but you know, the purest of discs would be like bare bottom only, 700 water changes an hour. And then there's the Corey method, which I have a video on this, by the way, how do I keep discus. The Corey method would be like, yeah, they get a 10% water change every day because I have automatic water change and they're on gravel and I feed them well. However, I've never bred wild caught discus. And so take that for a grain of salt. But if you look at what Dean does, Dean has, and it's the method I keep them. I'm not drawn to discus like so many people are. I can appreciate them. I go, that's a pretty cool fish. But watching them, I find them to be very boring. Same amount of people would say like, a guppy's a pretty cool fish, but watching them, I find that to be boring. I'm just not drawn to that fish. So I've never gone on my way to make more of them. Is there any place in the US that you know of that you can collect fish or plants legally? Does such a thing exist? Yeah, I don't know specifically, but I believe like in Florida, for instance, you have to get a fishing permit and then you can collect a decent amount. And I think same in like Alabama and a lot of the places where the shiners are. For the most part, I think it's asking the locals or the club and they'll be like, oh yeah, here's how you do it. And I think for the most part, it's just a fishing license. But like in Washington, you can't actually. So, but I think quite a few states it can. Let's see. This guy's asking, do people keep invasive fish or plants that buy from another store from a different state and they bring them back into your state and it's illegal because it's invasive? Yeah, that happens. Like one of the common ones that we'll get. I mean, I'm not in the store anymore, but it happened, for like the 10 years basically that I worked in a fish store. You would get like once every, I would say like every 6 months, you'd get this call and you'd get a call be like, "Hey, so if I had piranhas, would you guys be interested in buying some?" And or a version of that, and they're like, "I'm going down to Portland and I could bring back piranhas. Would you be interested in buying some?" And they're basically in Portland, piranha are legal, and in Washington, they're illegal. And there'd be money to be made by somebody to break the law, to drive down there, buy them from a pet store, drive them back, and then sell them at a markup to somebody. The breaking of the law was just even bringing them back. But yeah, I have to assume that there's lots of people doing those types of things because they're brazen enough to call a pet store and be like, "Do you want to buy these illegal fish from me?" And it was different people. Like that was how they were making money. And we always said no, it's illegal. And yeah, so I'd have to assume that's uh, I don't know how prevalent. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, lots of people are doing it, but like it's definitely happening. I just don't know what quantities. Do I have anything in the works that I can release now? Nope, I don't think so. There's a lot of stuff that I keep slowing down because I want to make it better. So I only hype train people more. Do it faster. I want to do it faster, but I want to do it right. I really appreciate my hard water. It provides so much stability. There's a few plants that don't do well. I found getting fish from Dan's Fish is great because he's already converted them to the hard water. Yeah, I think the only thing I don't love about my hard water, so I had soft water for like the first 15 years of my career. Now I have hard water. The only thing I don't love is the calcium buildup on glass and tops and things. But it's I do wonder. I think so. I always said I'd rather have hard water, and now that I've had 5 or 6 years of hard water, I think if I could snap my fingers right now and I could have the water I had at my old house back, I would say, sure, yeah, I'll take that. However, it would not change me if I was going to buy a home or something, which by the way, I highly recommend any of you do. Like I watch people in my company do that. I'm like, you didn't test the water? Like, I mean, it's not the only thing for sure. Like your whole family, it matters, but I definitely want to know the water I'm about to buy a house with what it's like. And I think it's easier to take acidic water and make it hard or acceptable to fish with just crushed coral than it is to take hard water and make it soft. However, there are things I love about my well water. One, it's free, and that is amazing compared to where I used to live. Two, I have at the worst times of year up to 5 parts per million nitrate in the water. Dope. Because that means I get a little bit of fertilizer or a little bit of food for my plants when I change water. I also have a little bit of phosphates. I also have a little bit of more than a little bit of iron. But so just by changing water from my well water, I'm naturally helping my plants a little bit. Like it's not enough. I totally have to dose in addition. It's not enough on its own. But uh, what I'm saying is either water has been fine. I do now that I've been able to have an experience of both. I think if I could choose everything being equal, I would choose the softer water I had. But once you factor in actual factors like, oh, I had to pay for that water and I'd have to live at that house versus this house, I would definitely choose this water. And so, yeah, hard water, not so bad. And I mean, I do love libraries. It does help for that naturally. I'd rather have soft water for plants. Yeah, not me. There's so few plants that I keep that want. Let me take that back. Not want, need soft water. That I find that I'm trying to think of the only plant. Are there plants that I can't keep that I used to keep? I don't think so. I mean, I even have like lots of crypts and lots of. Yeah, I don't think I've run anything yet. Not that you couldn't, but I haven't. So my hobby hasn't changed, I guess. Uh, let's see here. So I won't buy your brother's red arowanas then? Nope. Yeah, people like to make jokes, but you know, here in Washington, stoners went to jail for quite a few years because of the illegal fish selling ring they had going. Then there was a reptile guy doing reptiles also. Like it's people do that kind of stuff, and I just my big thing is always there's almost always a legal way to get the thing you want. It is way more difficult, just like getting our Fly River Trail. It took me 15 years. Uh, but I can't imagine losing my livelihood because I'm making fast money illegally as opposed to just honest money slower. It seems like there's so much room in the aquarium industry to just make more honest money. Like it's like a never ending. People basically want healthy fish and they want to be able to trust you and all of that. And there's like a never ending demand for that. And somehow fish store owners and online business stuff are like, we could do that path or we could do the opposite. And it always blows my mind when they're like doing the opposite of like, but the path is so clear. Is there anything besides crushed coral you can use to increase your pH slowly over time? I haven't found a great alternative. I would say the next best, but I didn't have great results, would be like a crushed, like what is it, like the black limestones and things. Is it limestone? What do they call it? They have some like different reptile sands and uh some black limestones and stuff. But in my testing, after like 6 months, I'm like, I don't think it's done anything. So it must, in my experiments, it was like it's buffering so slowly that it is not helpful to my aquarium keeping. So, um, yeah. I didn't know desert pupfish are illegal. I was just curious on why it's not in the hobby if they're disappearing. Well, a lot of times it could be they're difficult to keep, which pupfish are a little bit difficult to keep, but there's so few of them, they don't want them collected and then not bred. And then there is a I would say a big disparity between things that could potentially be saved by the hobby, but there's just not the right oversight. So like the Olympic mud minnow in Washington is one of those. I think they're totally could be bred in captivity and all of that. But then there's also the just because you breed something in captivity doesn't mean it could go back out into the wild. And so it might not even help that initiative. Does my 84-degree discus water contribute to my plant struggles? Probably. Most plants don't want to be that warm. At the warehouse, we installed like a $15,000 HVAC system just to prevent them from getting too warm in the warehouse uh, during the summer because we would see at, I guess, the macro level of thousands and thousands of plants, you could see it wasn't like, how do I explain it? It's not like, oh man, they all just died, but it would be like, it'd be things like we can see the defect rate tick up a little bit. We could see the growth be doing a little bit different. We could see algae being a little bit different. And so it was keeping them basically at like 76, just like didn't curb it, but like it retarded all that a little bit. Let's see. I bought some Corridoras Hefeatus. I don't know if I know those. They're extremely expensive, and I think I have the skills to breed them. What do you do? What do you do when you manage to breed something that was really expensive? Ah, I sell them for way less. That's what I do every time. Uh, it could be because I'm in a privileged situation. I recognize that fact. But even when I wasn't, my goal was always if I could breed something on average, I could make more of it. And I wanted to sell them quickly and move on and gain reputation. And so I don't know what you paid for these, but let's say you paid $100 or more for them. I always ask myself, like, okay, but would it be worth me selling them at $25 a piece? And the answer was usually like, yeah, that'd be real lucrative. And they'd be a quarter of what other people sell them for. I'll sell mine really quickly. And that would be good for me. I can reinvest that or I can do something with that money. Now, I know there's other people, especially Corridor people, that go out of their way to breed very few and want to sell them for hundreds of dollars each. And while that does seem to be a business model, it personally just goes against my business model or my hobby model of like, this hobby exists to share. Like, this hobby only exists because we share information, we breed fish, we share them. And I've always had a soft spot for trying to keep things affordable. You know, back when I was poor Corey, new to the hobby, seeing groups of Tropheus that I wanted so bad and they're like $500 plus shipping. And then knowing that like they're kind of one of the easiest fish I've bred. Like, they're not difficult in my experience. And they're not hard to grow. It's just a rarity of it. And it's like, so there's a lot of fish that I kind of feel like at $10 a fish are totally worth people's times. And you can get more money for them. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but my philosophy is make a bunch, enjoy the process. I always seem to make money from them, which is good, and I buy the next thing. So, um, yeah. I haven't found hardness to be an issue for Corridoras. I've bred Sturbai, Pandas, and Barbados. Yeah, I've got a decent amount of orange lasers that come out of this tank. I need to set up some other tanks to really breed, which I haven't. They're kind of still in the musical chairs phase of a lot of commingled tanks at the moment, which is not optimal for breeding. And what I mean by that is if you're really trying to optimize for breeding, like I've got a bunch of uh guppies that need to go to the store and just be sold because I made a bunch. It's fine. But when I drop like a cube of bloodworms in there, the guppies probably get 95%, and then the Corridoras get that extra 5%. Where if it was just the Corridoras, they now get 100%. And that oftentimes can be the difference between breeding and not breeding. I could also just put 2 cubes of bloodworms in there, but it's only a 10-gallon tank, and then maybe it still might be like, oh, the guppies are overeating and kind of getting not bloated, but like eating too much, and now they get like half a cube of bloodworms on the Corridoras. Meanwhile, if I just separate them out, I can really control their feeding. I can make sure they're getting enough, and I don't have to worry about. I'm not going to sit there and watch them eat for 40 minutes. So it's a lot of guesstimation. Planted Goldie says, yes, that's correct. It was a bucket list fish of mine. I bought them for $100 a piece, and I just want to spread them in the hobby. Yeah, I mean, I totally get the gotta pay for your bills and things, but I also understand the like, if you think about it, like this is your bucket list fish, and they're $100 a piece, and let's say you just bought 6, you spent $600. You 3 years ago, right? You might be going, oh man, what if that fish was $20 each, and you could have got 6 for $120? You might have already been enjoying them. And then there's people that, you just got a promotion and all of that. There's people that are never gonna afford $600 in fish, and rightfully probably shouldn't. Like $600 is a lot of money for fish. And you'll hear me say that fish are worth any amount of money, and I agree. The fact that we keep fish in a glass box in our homes is mind-blowing and awesome. But at the same time, if we have the option to spread them around and let people enjoy them and all of that, and you're not losing money, why not? That's kind of my philosophy is why not? Maybe I like that, someone has to take a risk, and I have taken that risk many times, and I understand that. So, like, let's say you pay 100, you're into it for $600. My goal is normally one of the goals I have is the first batch of fish I sell hopefully pays for them. So let's say you made 20 babies. Okay, well those 20 babies gotta cost $30 each, so you recoup your $600. But then maybe the next batch could be even cheaper. Casey's Vivariums with 5 membership donations. Someone else donated 500 earlier and I missed it. Casey, I feel like your name was something else before instead of Casey's Vivariums. Am I right? Am I wrong on that? Do I have an updated preference for online site to buy and sell fish? Hearing Aquabit has now has more scams since the update. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to that. That's the first time I've heard of that. But I would say my current go-to would be Aquafinder. It's on our live fish page. It's AQ, like Aqua Finder, but no E. So FINDR. I put my hope in this website. I guess that's I don't like I'm not I guess I'm endorsing, I don't know. Technologically, and I met the owner, and it feels like it's trying to do the right thing, but you never know. Things could change. Someone else could make the next best website. They could get 10 times better. I don't know, but I feel like I want uh I want a website to make it. So that's true. I like the way that Aquafinder is going, and I hope it makes it because we need someone to win. That's basically what we need. We need someone. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to us as buyers and sellers. It doesn't really matter. We need something to win. And then if we all go there, it will continue to win. Like, we just need the meeting spot. That's all we need. We need a good meeting spot, and we can make the rest happen. So, that being said, I will say that I bought some fish off of our forum last week. They'll be shipping tomorrow, and they'll be here this week. I'm buying some trout goodieads because I was thinking about doing a video of this. There's the fish that keep going and coming back to my life. I now have there's some that I'm like, I don't think I can get rid of these again because every time I do, I regret it. And then I get them back in like a year. And trout goodieads are one of those fish for me. Like, I like them, and they're gonna be in my forevers of like, I don't want to not keep that fish. And every time I do, I regret it. The last batch I got weren't colorful enough, and so I kind of got rid of them again. But these ones are from Greg Sage's line, so I'm hoping they're gonna be the color I want. And they're good hair algae eaters too. I like that. Aquafinder domain is 7,500. That's an expensive vowel. So also what happens a lot of times is when you see those domains and they're like, you could own this for 7,500 or whatever the number is. That's like a starting kind of clickbaity number. And then you email the broker or whatever, and they're like, oh, actually, that's not the real number. That's just the number we put. They actually want 30,000. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not buying that. So just from my own experience, just know that's like a starting number that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But yes, Aquafinder without the E is the current place I go. That being said, and I like to be as transparent as possible. I keep coming back here, and I'm not finding stuff to buy, but I do recognize, I'm like, I don't hate the experience. I just need more. The reality is I just need more people to sell. That's really what it comes down to. Because the sections I look in, if we drop down to like live bearers, where is it? Yeah, platies, mollies, and swordtails. There's one. It's been that same blue platy for like the last 3 months at least. And I just go, ugh, okay. And then you go to guppies and endlers. And it's like, yeah, I've played with most of these, so all right. But it's a chicken and the egg. Eventually, there's going to be stuff I want to buy, and that's going to be great. And there's other good fish. I mean, I see good fish on the homepage, different rice fish, different angels, um, orange Venezuelan corridoras at $9.99. Like the prices are fine. It's good. It's just not what I'm looking for. And to be fair, I have a very weird, eclectic short list at this point. So I wouldn't even say that, I wouldn't say that there's not fish to buy. It's just not the stuff I'm looking for. But I have a weird list at this point. Planted goldies, yeah, I'm into them for about $1,200, and I'm in a privileged situation. Just want to spread them out. Yeah, $1,200 is a big recoup cost. You might not get that out of the first spawn, but it shouldn't, as long as you get them going, it shouldn't be too hard to recoup that. Lisa the Wolf says, I heard the scam info from breeders who have been selling on Aquabid for years. I don't know. I mean, I always try to put it in context of like, if you're like, everything is a scam. And what I mean by that is like, take your local fish club. To the average person, you might show up, watch a meeting, and be like, that was great. But behind the scenes, the club politics, like, well, ever since Bill took over, it's been nothing but disasters. And I can't believe he spent $12.16 on the pamphlets when it used to only be $11.64. And that gets translated to like, the club's blowing up. It's never been in this bad of a situation. And then the reality is like, yeah, but the person that's been coming every year for the past 42 years literally doesn't know anything about the politics. It's been the same event for them. And what I want to be fair to like an Aquabid and the sellers and the buyers and all that is like, humans hate change, and sometimes they perceive change as, and they want to see like something go bad. Now it could be that, every grandma on the planet's getting scammed off of Aquabid. I have no idea. But that was a weird sound. I think my computer made that sound. But I also know that there's an equal amount of like, people just hate change. And so, because in my mind, this is the question I would ask, like, how are people getting scammed? Like, I understand that, like, let's say you're a seller, you sell it, you take the money through PayPal, and then the person is dishonest and like files for their money back. That happens to us all the time at Aquarium Co-op. Does that mean Aquarium Co-op is full of scams? Like, no. Does that mean Aquabid is? Like, I think it's some bad actors. I don't know if Aquabid has anything to do with that. But I don't know enough to know. I would say, for all I know, Aquafinder's a giant scam. I think, yeah, there's a whole different rant about a technology revolution that needs to happen in terms of buyer seller fairness that needs to happen, because yeah, it's fairly easy to take advantage of any business at the moment. It's fairly easy to take advantage of customers also. Like, it's, like my grandma, super easy to take advantage of online. Likewise, Aquarium Co-op, pretty easy to take advantage of. You can easily do a chargeback and all of that, and you can only do X amount before your credit card will drop you and everything. But we lose more than we win of cases where it's like, well, I can prove that we have a video, we put it in a box, and we can prove that it arrived to your doorstep. And you'll be like, I never got it. And on average, credit card companies or PayPal, whoever, will side with that on average. Sucks, but it's just how it is. On Aquabid, there are people trying to buy fish with professional movers, identities changing, probably a small party. But how is that different than any other platform, I guess? So, like, couldn't the bad actor be doing that on a Facebook group, a band app, Aquafinder, a website? That's what I'm trying to, like, yeah. Oftentimes things get swept up in it. It's like, but is that the fault of Aquabid? Like, I don't think it's the Aquabid owner going, I'm gonna run this giant scam. I think it's someone targeting them. Like, okay, a good example. If someone comes to our website and tries to verify if a credit card they've stolen is valid, and then uses it to buy at the local gas station down the road from them, we can't necessarily stop it, but we're not helping them do it either, like, not willingly. And that could be a situation. Again, I don't know anything about I hate talking about a situation I don't know about, because when it comes back in the comments like 2 days later where it's like, "But all of this is going on," like, "Well, yeah, I clearly have way more information than I had before. That does change things." But I yeah, I guess I just hesitate whenever I heard a thing that this thing is doing a thing, and it's like, "Yeah, but I hear that about everything." Like, if you're online in the fish world enough, everything's doing a thing always. And then proof is in the pudding like 2 years later when it's like, "Oh, that thing wasn't doing a thing?" Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, a great example I think a lot of us have lived through, remember when there was about 11 and a half minutes where all fish were gonna get banned forever because of the Legacy Act, and every YouTuber, every article, every magazine, everything was like, "The world's coming to an end 12 minutes from now," and then 12 minutes passed and everyone moved on because the headline was over? Like, remember that? Just take that and do it for everything in aquatics, and then do that for everything in the world, and that's how the world operates. So, um, yeah, I guess my skeptical brain is like, "Yeah, I don't know. I've talked to the owner of that website before when I wanted to buy it. Seems like an okay dude." And I used that site for many years to basically support my family, and it worked fine. And there was scammers then, there'll be scammers tomorrow. The internet is the internet. There's always gonna be someone trying to scam somebody. Let's see. Just got 8 orange rice fish. They really like your magic small fish feed. Good. Glad to hear it. Just reporting the chatter on Aquabid. Only other thing I've seen is slow responses. I could see that. You know, their forum. Last time I checked in on it, like, it's been dead for so many years. Where it's like there's like 3 posts a year, and half of them are like, "Is the forum still a thing?" I will say running an auction website for fish is a very difficult thing. Like, it's so hard when, like, it doesn't look like the picture. It got slightly delayed. This happened, that happened. That's why I never got involved. Like, I think I could run one, but I don't want to. Struggling with a way to add crushed coral to my tank without mixing it into the gravel or putting it in a filter. I don't have a media bag. Um, I mean, maybe like a box filter. I don't know, this some of these questions, and it's not, meant to single out Planet Goldies, but I do find it comical sometimes where it's like, "I'm having trouble eating broccoli, but I refuse to eat it or drink it or be in the same room with it or this," and it's like, "Yeah, it's kind of this means broccoli's not gonna happen." Same thing with, like, crushed coral, like, well, if we don't want it on the substrate, we don't want it in the filter, like, that's kind of the 2 main uses for it, so it gets really difficult, like, and you don't have a bag to put it in, it's like, well, it's gotta hit that water somehow. I think the box filter, maybe, but honestly, I would find a way to put it in a filter if I don't wanna see it. If you don't care about seeing it, I would mix into the substrate. Um, the other option, you could buy like a big piece of coral. You'll need a bigger piece than like just the same amount crushed up, but that big piece can at least go like tank to tank. After time, it'll dissolve slower, but Dean uses bigger chunks that he puts like in some of his filtration, and I definitely have used some big. Maybe I'll see if I can buy some non like coral pieces. I guess I don't know. What am I trying to find? I haven't had any because usually at the store, and I'm sure I could tell my people at the store to like start saving it or whatever, but like people will bring it in from their saltwater builds or whatever, like big pieces of coral, and sometimes that's nice. I like if you take a big piece of not big, but if you take a piece of coral and you put things like Anubias or Java fern on it, it'll end up looking like it's a plant, but the inside is still helping buffer your water a bit. So like that might be a way to get around like wanting to add crushed coral for the buffering properties, but not getting that look. But at the beginning, it's still going to be like, that's just a bright white piece of coral that doesn't look very good. Like, that's true. But long term, it would grow plants, I think. Or not think, but I know it would. Is there a place to sell an 8-inch pleco? I mean, if it's just a common type pleco, not really. If it was like an 8-inch green phantom, like sure, probably. I would, but even then, it's like an aqua finder, maybe a local forum or club. Have I tested my underground filter plates with Powerhead yet? Not besides just test fitting, no long-term test, but Zenzo's got one running long-term. You like my crusty shirt? That's right, my little crabs. Saltwater crabs, I'll bet you. Oh, yeah, they gotta be. You might be better off donating that pleco to a store. Yeah, honestly, what works best, and it's not the answer people want, but like what moves the needle at the store I used to manage and the store I own now is like paying the store. Everyone thinks it's insane, but when you think about it logistically, of like, you're bringing me this animal that I don't really want because I'm not willing to buy it off you, and I just told you I don't want it because I gotta take care of it until I find it a home. It's like if you go, hey, I'll give you $20 and the animal, so that way you're at least not out of pocket to find it a home. That sounds a lot better, a lot of times. So the other way that the way that conversation also works is, hey, if I can trade in this pleco that's got this big bio load, I want to buy all of these fish. So if I buy all these fish, we take this pleco. That's more likely to happen at a store as well because they're like, oh, I'm going to make money off this. Because literally every day the phone rings, hey, I got a bunch of fish no one wants. Will you take them? That happens every day. The big pleco happens every day. And if you just say yes, you end up with like, I got 40 of these things and I can't find homes. So if you sweeten the deal with, hey, I'll buy fish or plants, or I'll spend some money, or I'll give you money, or whatever. The giving the money part is a lot of times people are moving. They're like, hey, I got to be out of my apartment by tomorrow night. I need this thing gone today. I've never asked someone like, you got to give me money and I'll take it, because the reality is, I still don't want it. You just go, yeah. Do we sell it to you? We didn't. We don't sell common plecos. So where'd you buy it from? Take it back there. They won't take it back. Like, yeah, that's unfortunate. And then I start going into like, we're not going to make money off this. We're here to make money. And if you were going to donate it to a shelter, at least they've got ways to, people are donating to help take care of those things at a shelter. Here, we're for profit. Doesn't make sense for us to take care of a thing otherwise. Planet Goldie says, okay, making an executive decision. I'm just going to put it in a cancer filter. Does that mean it will degrade faster? Yeah, so it will. So when you have crushed coral and you have water, the more they contact each other, in theory, the faster they're going to break down and add minerals to the water. The good news is you can just add less. So let's say, my recommended when you're doing in the gravel is 1 pound sprinkled throughout the gravel per 10 gallons of water. Is that what I do? I think it's been so long since I said that. 1 per 10. Yeah, 1 per 10. And so, but in a cancer filter, you might just go like, oh, I'm just going to use like 1/3 of a pound or something. But you might have to, freshen that up or replace that every 3-6 months. You kind of got to test the water and just see, because it depends on how acidic is your water starting, and then also how much water are you changing. And so some people that don't have very acidic water and don't change very often might be like, oh, 1/3 of a pound and my filter lasts me over a year. And then someone literally might go, it lasts me a month. And so after you have it for a while, though, and you test, you can go, okay, where is it starting to like, yeah, I've been doing the same amount of water changes, but my pH is sitting lower than it used to. Okay, I should refresh the crushed coral. People understand that for dogs and cats and other mammals, it seems fair enough. Yeah, I did a lot of comparing a fish store to your local animal shelter to try, and people go, oh, okay, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, Yeah, when you go and you get a dog and there's an adoption fee, that's to pay for the food and the care and any of the, neutering or anything that had to be done. It's kind of the way a fish store works, right? Like when you buy a fish, like we had to take care of it, we had to do a thing. Like, yes, we are buying it and selling it at a profit most often, but the things like out of the orphan tank we have, or we helped someone, we took on this big Oscar from or something, and we're trying to find them the right home, and that sometimes it would take many months to find the correct home for a large animal. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to take this pleco and then put free on it in the store and someone else takes it and then it's not a good fit for them. Like that's not fair to the animal. Because there are people that are new and will either just take everything for free, or there's people that we've heard that before where they're like, oh well, I'll euthanize it and I'll turn it into fish food. It's like, well, I'm not sure we're at that point yet either. Like that is a solution, but not a solution that I like the sounds of. Let's try to find an appropriate home first. Because sometimes there are like a fish that's way too aggressive or has damage to the fins or whatever. It's never going to recuperate. No one's ever going to want it. Like maybe their jaw's missing. Like there are times when it's like, okay, maybe that's the most humane thing to do. But if you just had a good 8-inch common pleco that just needs to find a better home, like there's still some homes for it. Does crushed coral dissolve and disappear over time, or just run out of minerals release? On a long enough timeline, it will literally disappear to nothing. In the shorter timeline, the easy to dissolve minerals will dissolve first, and you'll be left with a harder exoskeleton that dissolves much slower. And so you'll get almost like a couple different phases: the buffering the water super duper well and fast. Then you'll go like, oh, it's bare, like it's really not doing nearly as much, and then it'll actually be gone. And so, like Dean, the way he does it, he basically uses the big chunks, and they might take 3 to 5 years to dissolve, but he'll put enough back there that even after the quick dissolving part is gone, what's left is buffering the water just enough to keep him where he wants to be for many, many years. And so that's kind of the trick, is like, but why doesn't it just do the same way it always did? It's like, well, it's slowly dissolving, and you have kind of these easier to dissolve minerals and these harder to dissolve exoskeletons of the crushed coral. And so, yeah, it's a 2-stage process, really. The other thing I should mention is that the more coral you have, the slower it will dissolve in theory, right? So if your entire substrate is crushed coral, and let's say it could buffer your water to where it needs to be overnight, then it basically stops buffering. It's not that quick, but we're simplifying it. And then when you do a water change, let's say you change 20%, it'll buffer that overnight, and it's just a little bit when you have all this crushed coral. Meanwhile, if you have very little crushed coral, it might take a long time to dissolve and kind of raise it up, takes, a month. And when you do a water change, it takes longer, but it's using more of it. So like another way to visualize that, let's say you have 40 pounds of crushed coral as your substrate in a 40 breeder. And every time you change water, it uses a teaspoon of it, which that it wouldn't use that much, but let's say it uses a teaspoon of it. You're like, wow, I've got years worth. Meanwhile, if you have like just a small handful, you're like, oh, I have a couple months worth in the palm of my hand. And so it's not like if I have 40 pounds, it's going to use 40 pounds in a month. It uses a teaspoon every water change, and I put in enough for a year's worth of water changes. So, let's see. My Chinese algae eater is probably about 6 inches, and I love Lord Algernon. Yeah, Lord Algernon. He's nothing like the little horror stories. Nice. Well, he's still a little bit young. He can get up towards to like 10, 12 inches or so. And I haven't kept a ton of Chinese alligators. I've kept some. They usually come into the store as like orphans, but I would wager a, a lot of their meanness is inappropriate tank size. Like you start getting a 6-inch fish, like it should be in like 150 or larger, really. And as they get bigger, and so I could see them, I think their temperament's more like a red tail shark or something like that. There's a little bit territorial, except they get bigger than those by quite a bit. And so I think it runs into like they want a bigger territory and they get a slightly unfair rap. Like I think so many of the semi-aggressive fish like tiger barbs and other stuff, they get an unfair rap because we're not super well educated about them. We haven't tried them enough in enough different scenarios to know like this is where they actually thrive, and that's a great setup for them. Um, but I do reserve the right to be wrong in that, yeah, maybe I do run all those tests and like, oh, these guys they're just a bummer. They're always mean to people. Have I seen Lowell's latest video? I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't watched it yet. I heard about it on the Deep in the Mulm from Randy, but I haven't physically watched it. For the most part, it takes a lot for me to want to watch a fish video. I got to be in the right mood. And oftentimes, that same mood is the mood where I want to work on the tanks and do things. And so, given a choice, I'm like, oh, I got stuff I want to do with my tanks, and not so much. But I'll probably watch it at some point. Hopefully in the background. Oh, it's after the 2-hour mark, so I should be wrapping this shindig up. Philodendron Pink Princess has pink roots. That's probably pretty fun in an aquarium. Let's see. If you're still around, which 390 of you are, I did put out an episode of Deep in the Mulm on Friday because I didn't film anything else. And I'm considering offering the Deep in the Mulm every week. We'll see if it catches on. Like, I really don't want to make the thumbnail and try to change the title or do anything like that. But it doesn't feel like it's too much of a slight against the membership either, as in, we're over a year ahead. So even though people just watch episode number 4, like we just did episode 70 something. And so as long as we keep filming one every week, if we released one to the public, it'd still kind of always be a year behind. So they'd still get the information, but miss out on like, oh, that's where they were talking about doing this event, or here's this thing, or the new products and stuff like that. So Deep in the Mulm, #1 fan. Well, that's good. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I'm honestly shocked that we've done like 70 some episodes and haven't missed one. So the plan of having at least 3 people in the podcast so we'd never miss, and then keeping it going while Randy and I were both absent in Brazil, I think we'll be able to keep it going for a long, long time. That's the hope anyway. And we talk a lot about a lot of non-fish stuff, but I think that's the only way that we can keep ourselves sane. Like we mix fish stuff in, but there's a lot of just, what's going on in Randy, Corey, and Zenzo's life and work and that kind of stuff mixed into that hour-ish long thing. Oh, that's a good point. Mountaintop Puffer Keeper mentioned the GSAS. The Greater Seattle Aquarium Society does have CatCon going on in October. So if you're local to Washington State or maybe Oregon or Idaho or Vancouver, BC up north, there is going to be a convention, in your backyard, or at least this coast, and it's CatCon. I haven't decided if I'm going yet. I'm leaning towards not because I don't want to, because I have to fly to Australia like 2.5 days later, and I really don't want to get sick before that 20 some hour flight or whatever it is. Like, it's a lot of travel, and I have a responsibility to the Rainbow Fish Club and the Melbourne Victoria Club to do my job and give out a good presentation. So if you're in Australia, there are tickets for sale. I think they're $20 because they rented a bigger hall, and the hall seats 400. And last I heard, over 25% have already sold. So that's, we're still a couple, month and a half-ish away. And so more and more advertising's kind of rolling out for that. And yeah, so Chris Lukup, they were able to seat like 70 some, and they had to turn people away, and so they booked a hall because they expect that more people would show up if I was there. And so I'm hoping that it sells out and they don't lose money on the thing, which I mean they're probably not going to lose money anyway. But I also want to give I don't want to talk in front of a bunch of people to an empty hall. So if you're local, think about showing up. And yeah, to both, I guess, really the CatCon and the Australia thing. Unfortunately, you might think like, why would you have booked those so close together? Well, I said okay to Australia before I ever knew CatCon was coming to uh, Washington, and so I was like, oh well, I'm not gonna back. I don't back out of the commitment, so it's like, well, we'll just have to see. And Aquarium Co-op has sponsored pretty handily. We sponsored every speaker for the club for CatCon, and then we just donated sponge filters and other things for the fish room sales and all that's going to be going on. So it's going to be a cool event. Dean's getting real involved in it, and yeah, I really don't want to get sick, and I know groups of people like I'm likely to get sick right before I hop on a plane, and that's not my favorite. Yeah, 10-gallon fish tanks will be at CatCon. I did see that. Yeah, so there's tons of people that will be there that I know, and then also like, but there's also they're paying for me to fly out to Australia and do my thing, and I don't want to be like, well, I just caught a cold, and so now I'm real sick, and I'll try to get through this. So yeah, when you shake a lot of hands, you can get sick. How's Mr. Peabody? Mr. Peabody is ready to move and still will not eat bloodworms. That little bugger. So I want to move him to a tank with more snails, but I think I want to move him to a 40 and then just keep dumping more snails in there for him. But I got to get the tank ready, and yeah. I totally get it's the same old story. Corey said he had to get the tanks ready, then didn't get them ready, and then sometimes you get sick for like a week and you're like, oh, do I go do that with a fever? I'm like, that's just gonna make it miserable. Like I'm gonna rush it. I'm not gonna want to film it. My camera still hasn't come, which that's a bummer. So yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that's it for today. I need to get some more to drink 'cause my voice is going, and I gotta feed fish and hopefully tacos tonight. That would be the case. That would be the lucky draw, tacos on Sunday nights. The only reason I live stream, I tell my wife like it's live streaming and tacos, right? I'll go do the live stream. So thanks for hanging out, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow. I will see you Sunday for another one of these. I will see you Tuesday if you're a member, because the Deep in the Mulm will come out. And then I'm hoping to see you Friday with a video I film for real this time. Hopefully done being sick, and we'll actually have the time to get some stuff done like I'm planning. So thanks for hanging out.